Out of all the mods I've played thus far, and I've played a lot of mods, I always find the Terraria 1.3 mods to be the best, mainly because they're actually complete, but also because they can be just as good looking as a newer 1.4 mod. I've made videos on a bunch of the main ones like Ancients Awakened, Shadows of Abaddon, Elements Awoken, and now it's time for Polarities. Honestly, this mod surprised me. If you compare its wiki to other mods, it just doesn't compete as well, but it definitely delivers with some beautiful boss fights, sick ass weapons, and whatever the hell this thing is. Prepare yourself for one of the weirder mods I've played. Also, I'm running out of mods to play, so please recommend me some. Please, I'm begging you. Okay, so I kinda sorta accidentally deleted the first recording for this video while I was getting rid of the recordings for the Lunar Veil video that I made. Go watch it if you haven't yet. But it was only the first 10 days of the video, and all that's really happened so far was I mined some wood, explored most of the surface, went mining, found a new limestone cave, found a new salt cave, built a pretty beautiful house if I do say so myself, made a few weapons that are honestly kinda mid so far, equipped a single new accessory that just improves my jumping capabilities, made an armor out of salt that allows me to move freely in liquids, and met a new NPC named the Ghost Rider that sells a bunch of books that do things like make demon eyes spawn when I get hit, and finally, I defeated the first boss, Storm the Cloudfish, but it did take me a few tries. It dropped a whole bunch of stuff, but the only useful thing was an item that allows me to turn the rain on and off. And now you should be all caught up. Sorry for accidentally deleting that recording, I'm just a little slow. I started off day 11 by defeating the Brain of Cthulhu and then did nothing with the Cryptanor and tissue samples that I got, and instead made the Cavern Carver, a melee weapon that seemed like it could be better than what I currently had, but it wasn't. I then made myself some mana potions because my magic weapons needed like 20 mana per use, and I hate that. I hate that. It's stupid. I hate that. On day 12, I finally got around to fighting the King Slime, but I didn't get the slimy saddle that I use every single playthrough, so I fought it again, and this time I dropped a ranged weapon called the Gel Thrower that has a 66% chance to not consume ammo. The blobs of gel that it shot bounced everywhere, and each blob was able to hit twice. Not just once, it was able to hit twice. This weapon was also considered to be flawless, which just meant that I defeated the boss without taking any damage, and I thought that if the King Slime dropped one, every boss would drop one, so I grabbed some boss summons and began trying to get some more flawless weapons. I continued doing this for all of day 13, but it was much more difficult than I had anticipated. Like, I only managed to get the flawless weapon from the Cloud Stormfish by the end of the day, and trying to get the weapon from the Eye of Cthulhu was practically impossible, thanks to the end of the fight where the eye just goes berserk. The flawless weapon from the Cloud Stormfish was called Eye of the Stormfish. It's a magic weapon that summons a storm vortex around the cursor, and it shoots a lightning bolt in the direction of the cursor. It was kinda ass, but I wasn't fully convinced it was useless yet, so I continued trying to use it. Also, let me say that the Gel Thrower I got from the King Slime was absolutely amazing. Like, it was shredding through anything that I fought. I started taking on the Brain of Cthulhu on day 14, and about halfway through the day I managed to get the Neural Basher, a melee weapon that shoots a giant neuron and shoots additional giant neurons on enemy hits, but I wasn't a fan of how slow it was, so I didn't use it. Other than the Eye of Cthulhu, I now had the flawless weapon for every boss I defeated so far, so I decided to make a stellar remote to summon the next boss, the Star Construct. I had to wait until night to fight this guy though, so in the meantime I defeated the Eater of Worlds to get its flawless weapon, and I happened to get it on my first try. It only took me one attempt. It was much easier than every other boss. It dropped a magic weapon called the Consumption Cannon, and what I thought was going to be a god tier weapon turned out to be one of the worst yet. I then continued the elevator while I waited for it to be night, but I totally lost track of time and went a few minutes over. I hate fighting bosses when I don't have the full amount of time in the night to fight them, so instead of summoning the Star Construct, I just fought the Eye of Cthulhu over and over again, but I had no luck. On day 15, I threw together a long platform to fight the next boss on, and then I got raided by the Goblin Army, so unfortunately I had to take out some gobbies. After I was done with them, I finished the elevator and got myself a bunch of Hellstone, but not for any weapons or gear or anything like that. I just wanted a Molten Pickaxe so that I could mine stuff faster. I was pretty much determined to get this flawless weapon from the Eye of Cthulhu before attempting the next boss, but I ended up running out of summons halfway through the night, and I just thought it was whatever, and took on the Star Construct. So far, so good. Okay, that was dumb with me. God, it really is too bad that I do so little damage. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why he has more arms. I don't know why he has more arms. Oh, this sucks. Oh, this sucks. He has more. Oh my god, he's got double the arms. I don't know what this is. Hey, well, I didn't get hit with it. Thank god. Oh. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Oh, he's trying to grab me. 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 But he can't. He can't, because he kind of sucks. Oh, it's a lot of stars. Oh, too bad he can only hit me with one of them. Yeah, honestly, I think it's just his attacks don't do that much damage, but this boss is so easy. Like, that one only did 14 damage. This is so easy. Oh, ow. Actually, that didn't even hurt that bad. Oh no, I'm low on health. Not anymore. Not anymore. Ow, ow, okay, he's kinda hurting me now. Okay, I've gotta be a little careful now. Because I'm not trying to do this fight again. No, sir, not trying to do this fight again. This has been one long fight. And boom. Just like that. Too easy. That boss was cool and all, but it was way too easy. Like, I have 400 health, and I'm pretty sure it never went below 300. The Star Construct dropped a bunch of sunplate bars that are used for the next set of gear, a new grapple that launches 4 of them out at once, and an accessory that improves hook stats, but it's just a grapple hook, so who needs to improve that badly? On day 16, I used the sunplate bars to make the Ocean Sky and a Winged Star Staff. The staff is a summon weapon that just is better than my current one, and the Ocean Sky is a magic weapon that summons a wave of stars to fall from the sky, but it was very, very bad. The boss up next was Gigabot, and it can only be fought underground, so I figured I could turn the limestone cave that I had into an arena since it was already pretty hollowed out, but it was filled to the brim with water, like to the brim, so I got to work draining it all out. I then made it a bit bigger and covered up the ceiling so that the stalactites or whatever they're called would stop falling, because they were falling on me and they were crushing me, they were piercing into my cranium, it was annoying as hell. Oh, I also found the Goblin Tinker and bought some rocket boots and a Tinker's Workshop from him like I do every single time. Once the arena was done, I went home and got myself some Spectre boots and continued the grind for the Eye of Cthulhu's flawless weapon. Just before the sun rose on day 17, I finally managed to get the Eye Eruption from the Eye of Cthulhu. It's a ranged weapon that throws servant eyes into the air to chase down enemies, but as good as I wanted it to be after all of my hard work, I just wasn't fully convinced this weapon was a banger. I then made the Star Ballist, which was also a ranged weapon that just shot out stars like it was a cannon. It would consume 20 stars and just fire them all at once. I was going to test out both these weapons against the next boss, but I need a gemfly to attract it, and to make a gemfly, I need a firefly, and they only spawn at night, so I spent most of the day making a hell highway. Once night arrived, I got to looking for a firefly, and thankfully managed to find just a single one, and I turned it into a diamond gemfly. I then died 2 times because I'm stupid before finally releasing the gemfly on day 18 and attracting the Gigabot. There we go. Boom, too easy. Too easy. Yeah, too easy. Yeah, too easy. Just like the last boss, I don't think I ever lost more than like 30 health, but I will admit this boss was pretty cool. It dropped a feral thing that inflicts me with the feral bite debuff that you get from bats, but it removes all of the bad effects so that I just get the good ones. It also dropped an echo staff that, when hit by it, grants a temporary 50% boost to critical strike chance against the enemy that was hit. I also deemed every weapon that wasn't the gel thrower as ass. Every single weapon was bad, like only the gel thrower was good. Afterwards, I went and talked to the ghostwriter because I had totally forgotten about her, and she started selling a bunch more books, and only then did I realize that a new book was added to the shop per boss that was defeated, and that each book title was actually a book title, but with a little twist based on whatever boss it was like for. I swapped out my book that summoned Servant Eyes for a book that increased my mining speed and tool damage, though I didn't really care about the tool damage part. I then headed on over to the dungeon, built a really long platform, and then defeated the Skeletron on day 19. After winning, I explored the dungeon for a bit to see if there was anything new, but there wasn't, so I just took a bewitching table and left. I did use all the bones that I got from the skeletons to make the bone slinger and some bone darts, but surprise surprise, it ends up being ass. The gel thrower is better. There wasn't anything else for me to do, so I just moved on to the next boss, Rift Denizen, and to summon it I had to catch an instability all the way up in space. I then summoned the boss, and this guy was just something else. Like, his attacks were nearly impossible to dodge, each attack lowered my maximum health, so healing was pretty much useless. There are too many attacks to comprehend, and it wasn't the big ass portal that I had to hit like right above my head, it was all the rifts that would just constantly open and close around me. For this fight, I figured that the eye eruption would be best since its projectiles home in on the enemy, so I re-equipped that for the next attempt, but it pretty much made no difference since I couldn't dodge anything regardless. I kept on attempting this for most of the day until realizing that I had totally forgotten to make the armor using those sunplate bars that I got from the star construct, so I did that, but all it did was increase my defense by 5 and my damage by 1. I got back to fighting the Rift Denizen on day 20, and I did this for the entire day. And I had managed to get down most of its attacks, but the one that would always cause me to lose just about every single time it came up was a move where it tries to blast me with some sort of heavenly light. The light itself is easy enough to dodge, but the little circles that spawn in the way are so annoying because they like bump me into the light. At one point on day 21, I literally won. I literally won. The guy was dead. But I guess it does that stupid ass heavenly light move right before it dies. I now knew that I could actually do this, so after a few more tries, I was able to close the Rift Denizen. As hard as that boss fight was, it was wonderful. Like usually you don't see boss fights like that till hard mode or even post Moonlord for that matter, so it was super duper cool to see early on. After all of my hard work, the Rift only dropped a lame-ass invisibility cloak, an even lamer summon that requires you to hold it out at all times, a useless grapple that just keeps on going until it's able to grab something, and a Fractal assembler, whatever that is. When the boss died, a status message appeared that read, "A chaotic rift has formed in the sky." So I drank a graph potion and went looking for this rift, and literally right above my house was now this rift made of fractal matter. On top of the rift was some sort of antenna with energy radiating around it, so I obviously decided to touch it, and I was immediately transported into the fractal dimension. I was also immediately ambushed on the other side by a group of enemies with almost 500 health each, but thankfully I managed to take care of them, and they dropped fractal residue that is used alongside with this fractal ore. Before I continue, I do want to point out that time does not work here. Does not work here at all. So to stay true to the 100 days aspect of this video, I will be tallying up how long I'm in this dimension for each time I go in, and making a rough estimate as to what day it is. There was a new ore here called Fractal Ore that made a whole bunch of new things, so I spent about a day in here gathering up a whole lot of it. This dimension was really weird. Like, there were trees made up of fractal matter and strands. It seemed to be just as big as the world that I was actually from. Despite all of the enemies that try to kill you on sight, there were signs of a more advanced life form, like chests inside of structures made for them, and this dimension inflicts fractalizing that slowly decreases my maximum health. The chest had some pretty cool things in them, like a twisted mirror that returns me to spawn and resets my fractalization, and this sick-ass magic weapon that would stop working as soon as I got hit, so there was no point using it. Oh, I also made a fractal pickaxe during all of this so that I could mine the ore much faster, because the pickaxe I was using beforehand was not cutting it. When I got back home, it was the end of day 22, and I decided to use the materials that I had gotten to make a whole bunch of new weapons. I made a fractal sword that dealt a whopping 128 goddamn damage and inflicts enemies with chaos state that causes them to take double the damage, but this sword was true melee, and honestly, I hate true melee. Like, even if it's pre-hard mode and I have a weapon that does like 300 damage, I just hate true melee. I then made the Cantor shot that shoots a fractal spray of bullets, but the weapon was burst fire, and I hate burst fire. Finally, I made the fractal sight that shoots a wave of fractal energy that splits upon hitting enemies, and it was perfect. It was the perfect weapon for me. I went back into the fractal dimension on day 23 just to continue exploring since this place was so big, and I didn't find anything new or whatever, so once I got back it was 7 AM on day 24. It was kind of a waste of a day. I made the melee version of the fractal armor set, and it doubles my defense, generates a shield of fractal energy while I'm moving, and cuts down the rate at which I lose health due to fractalization in the fractal dimension. It was kind of a wonderful set of armor. I then made an extra layer of NPC housing, summoned the Wall of Flesh, and defeated it almost without taking any damage. Wouldn't that have been cool? Just getting the flawless weapon from the Wall of Flesh on my first try? That would have been amazing. After my victory, I checked out the Ghostwriter shop, and she now sold these reading glasses that allow me to use 2 books at once, so I equipped that in place of the Hopper Crystal that buffed my jumping, and bought a new book that increases my max health by 10%. Just before the day was up, I broke a bunch of altars. From the fractal dimension, I had run into these fractal laser traps that dealt hundreds of damage and nearly killed me, so on day 25, I dug out a pit on both sides of my house and installed them, but this was for nothing because it doesn't even work on enemies. I then decided that I wanted wings, so I got all the materials to make some pixie wings, and then remembered that I hadn't even gotten to the hardmode ores yet, so I spent the rest of the day finishing that up, making pixie wings, and getting some souls of light and night for the mech bosses. On day 26, in the 4-ish minutes that I had before the night was over, I managed to defeat the Destroyer. Later on in the day, I noticed that I could upgrade my Warrior emblem to the Rattler emblem, but to do this, I needed Venom glands, so I headed on over to the desert to try to get some, but I never got any. I didn't get a single one. Once night arrived, I took out the twins and the Skeletron Prime by the time day 27 rolled around. Afterwards, I made the summons for the 2 events that this mod has to offer, the Rapture and the Pestilence. And I was really excited for both these events because the Rapture is when like everybody ascends to heaven or something, and the Pestilence is like it's like a bubonic plague, like the worst plague to happen. I then did some looking around in the recipe browser for new weapons because I obviously wasn't powerful enough yet, and came across the weapons that needed whatever dendritic energy is and some fractal bars to be made. So I headed on over to the fractal dimension, assuming that this energy would be somewhere in here, but all I found was this perfectly carved out arena with some new block in the middle. So, as anybody would, I tried to mine it, but all it did was summon a Post-Plantera boss. I thought that I was going to immediately die, but it turns out this boss is relatively easy, and the only issue that I had was I wasn't dealing nearly enough damage. Like, I was able to dodge the attacks, I just couldn't kill the thing. I was in there for quite a while though, so by the time I had respawned, it was the morning of day 28. There wasn't anything left for me to do other than to fight the next boss, so I headed on over to the Hollow and started the Rapture. Now, I was going to make this really cool edit with some awesome music and shit to showcase this event, but it was very lackluster. Like, the background didn't change or anything, and it just summoned a few slightly challenging enemies to attack me, and once that was done, nothing happened. All I got was a summon for the next boss. I was told that a boss named the Sun Pixie was supposed to spawn at the end, but I guess not. So I summoned it myself using the item that I got, and literally 5 seconds into this fight, another one spawned. Just out of nowhere, another one spawned. So I suppose this is a lesson on patience. I suppose if I would have waited those 5 extra seconds, I may have been able to beat the boss first try, but I obviously ended up losing. After that embarrassment, I tried to fight just one of them, and I still ended up losing, so I got to thinking that melee is just not my class. I mean, if you've seen any of my other videos, it never was. I'm just not really a get up close kind of guy. I like to kick back and let like my minions or homing bullets do all the work. I was really unsure of what class to change into, but on day 29 I came across a ranged weapon called Eclips, I definitely pronounced that wrong, that deals 24 damage and shoots 3 projectiles, which sounds awful, I know, but I got some chlorophyte, made some chlorophyte darts that deal 14 damage and stick to enemies, and plucked that pixie's wings. Boom, dude, that was actually so much easier with this weapon. Oh my god. Oh my god, that was so much easier. Not only was I able to beat the Sun Pixie with this weapon on the first try with like using this weapon, but I did it without any ranged buffs or anything of the sort. It was crazy. It dropped a whole bunch of garbo, but the gift of knowing that this weapon had killed it was good enough for me. It was good enough for me. I didn't need anything else. I made a Fractal visor to switch my armor to the range set bonus right away, and now hitting enemies with ranged attacks would cause an exploding target to appear at the cursor. I spent all of day 30 refighting the Sun Pixie so I could get this little winged Everlight that attacks wherever the cursor is and the Solar Scarab summon. On day 31, I headed over to the desert that had been completely overcome by Crimson to start the Pestilence, and just like the Rapture, it was kinda lackluster. Like, I was really disappointed. But I will say about this one, the enemies were way cooler and much more difficult. At the end of the Pestilence, I actually waited for the boss to spawn and took out Esophage. How do I pronounce Esophage? I think it's pronounced Esophage or Esophagy. It's one of the two. Okay, ignore the noise in the background, but that boss was so easy. That boss was unbelievably easy. I don't know, maybe I'm over-prepared, but that boss fight was so easy. That fight was so easy. It was so easy, which sucks so much because this was the boss fight I was looking forward to the most. Esophage dropped a whole bunch of shit, but most of it was garbage like seeds and solutions. The only items that actually matter were the Esophage's staff that summons a baby Esophage and the evil DNA that's used to make some new weapons. I then bought 2 new books from the Ghostwriter since I had defeated 2 more bosses. The first book increases speed and defense while on the ground, and the second book leaves behind a damaging solar trail. In the end, I continued to use the book that increases my health by 10% and the new solar trail one. On day 32, I farmed Corrupt and Crimson Mimics so that I could use the evil DNA and make the Hemiola, because it was a new dart weapon, but it was awful to use. It was awful. I then spent the rest of the day farming those weird-ass green enemies in the limestone cave so that on day 33 I could use all of the limestone carapaces that they dropped to make a bunch of piercing potions that just increased my armor penetration by 6. Once that was done, I headed on over to the jungle and got to work on an arena for the Plantera, which ended up taking me the rest of the day. I finished up the arena super early on day 34 and defeated the Plantera without an issue. I then went and got some ectoplasm to upgrade my reading glasses to the spectral glasses so that I could start using 3 books instead of 2. The book that I chose to use as well was the one I got from the Plantera that grows these plant tentacles from my body, and it was pretty cool. Like, it looked really cool. It also came off of my grapple too. Afterwards, I spent the rest of the day looking for life fruits, but I only found like 6 of them. Now that the Plantera was dead, I bought vials of venom from the witch doctor and used them to make venom darts that deal double the damage of the chlorophyte ones I was using, and they explode into a venom cloud. It was pretty sick. The next boss was that weird ass thing that I accidentally summoned back in the Fractal dimension, but that guy was easy as hell. Like, my only issue last time was, again, that I couldn't deal enough damage, but I certainly do now, so I headed on over to the Fractal dimension and disturbed the self-similar Sentinel. That boss was sick as hell. I loved how it used the entire arena for the fight, because usually bosses don't do that, just kind of like fly around and like whatever arena that you make, but this one had a pre-made arena and I used the entire arena for the fight. It was amazing. The self-similar Sentinel shattered into 202 pieces of self-similar ore, and this ore isn't used to make the next set of gear. No. It's used to upgrade all of the old gear that I made with the Fractal ore. It also dropped its heart that granted me a bunch more health, a bunch more defense while the health is retained, and when the health is lost, it releases homing wisps, so I obviously swapped that in place of the adaptive genes that I got from Esophage, God, I can't pronounce that, from that boss that I totally forgot to mention earlier. I didn't mention this item at all, just forgot. I'm not going to go back and do it, I just forgot. All of the gear upgrades cost a lot of self-similar bars, and I really didn't want to have to keep fighting the boss over and over again, so I made a pickaxe out of the stuff, and it said it could safely mine the self-similar ore. So I went back down to the arena in the Fractal dimension to test it, and it worked. I could now mine the ore. I did this a couple of times, and with all of the time that it took to get the ore and fight the boss, I'm just going to say that it took me all of day 36 to do this, so it's now day 37. On day 37, I used the rest of the self-similar bars that I had made to upgrade my Fractal armor to the self-similar armor, and it literally just buffed all of the aspects of the Fractal armor. I then headed on over to the jungle temple and absolutely destroyed the golem. Like this guy stood no chance whatsoever. When it died, a bunch of numbers appeared in the chat, and after some research I found out that it just meant a new ore started growing in hell. I found this ore all the way to the left of the map in a literal ocean of lava, like it's a new biome. It's called the Lava Ocean. I started mining a bunch of this ore when some beast called the Convection Worm spawned out of nowhere, circled me like a snake in Slither.io, and fried me. Absolutely fried me. I then spent the rest of the day in the dungeon looking for a handgun so that I could use the Manteller ore that I got from the Lava Ocean to make the Draconian on day 38. This gun deals over 400 damage a hit and shoots fireballs that explode into whatever bullet I had in my inventory. And it was amazing. Don't get me wrong. This weapon was beautiful, it was amazing, it was wonderful. But it didn't have auto fire, so I had to click every single time I wanted to fire it. It was really annoying. To make this weapon even better, I wanted to make these laser bullets, so I started the Martian Madness event to get a bunch of Martian conduit plating. Once I defeated the Martians, I made the laser bullets, but unfortunately it caused my game to lag like crazy every single time I shot the gun, so I could not use them, unfortunately. There was one other kind of bullet that I could make, but I would have to defeat the next boss first, so I just used crystal bullets in the meantime. Lucky for me, there was nothing else to do other than to fight this next boss, so I used my strange clock that I got from the Star Construct to skip all the way to day 39 so that I could start an Eclipse. I then summoned the Eclipse, which is just an upgraded version of the Sun Pixie, and started my fight with the worst boss in this game. Okay, now I don't actually mean this boss is the worst, like it's super cool and all, but it was definitely the hardest. I just kept making the same mistakes over and over again, but surprisingly, within the same day that I started fighting it, I defeated the Eclipse. I remember this boss fight being really hard and annoying, and I thought it took me much longer to defeat it, like when I was recording this. But now that I've gone back through the footage, I realized that the Eclipse was easy as hell. This boss was easy as hell. It dropped a handful of Eclipse dust and a new Solar Eye staff that summons a Solar Eye minion. The dust isn't really used for much other than the bullets I was talking about and these Eclipse wings that cost 100 dust to make, and I really wanted them. Before I did anything, I noticed that this entire time I've still been using the Warrior emblem. So I defeated the Wall of Flesh and replaced it with the Ranger emblem. Like what am I doing? I then sped to the morning of day 40, made the Black Sun bullets that I'd been talking about, bought a new book that's just a better version of my Solar Trail book, and tried farming the Eclipse for more dust to make those wings, but I was struggling, dude. Like I couldn't seem to beat this boss again. I just couldn't. I don't know why. Eventually night arrived and I hadn't defeated it even once, so I just moved on to the next boss for now, Hemorrhage, which is just an upgraded version of Esophage. It did take me a couple of attempts, but eventually I defeated Hemorrhage on day 41. This guy was significantly easier than the Eclips, like miles easier than the Eclips, but it was also a really, really gross fight. Like the dude was pissing and bleeding everywhere. It dropped a bunch of hemorrhagic fluid that, just like the Eclips dust, wasn't really used for much other than this altar that reduces enemy defense by 24. I then headed on over to the dungeon and decimated the lunatic cultist. Like bro stood no chance. He was down in under a minute. With him out of the way, I took down the Vortex Pillar and made the Celestial Storm, the final dart weapon of this mod, and honestly, it kinda sucked. My Draconian does much more damage. After that disappointment, I spent the rest of the day taking out the Stardust Pillar. I finished getting the rest of the life fruits I needed on day 42 and started actually farming the Eclips so that I could make those new wings. I did this for all of day 42 and the beginning of day 43 until I finally got 100 Eclips dust and made the Eclips wings. There was nothing special about these wings. They were just better than the ones I had. I didn't think they were just better than all. Afterwards, I spent some time building an asphalt platform for the Moonlord fight, took out the Nebula Pillar, and got started on the Solar Pillar. I finished taking out the Solar Pillar on day 44, which, by the way, is the easiest pillar out of the four. Like significantly easier than the rest. And then I took out the Moonlord on my first try. Unfortunately, there was literally nothing I could make with Luminite, so I made a supercharged battery to summon the final boss, and got to work. After that absolutely embarrassing attempt, I bought the final book from the Ghostwriter that grants all attacks a 50% chance to lifesteal, and this allowed me to survive for much, much longer. The polarities were, excuse my language, fucking ridiculous. Like, can you tell me what's going on here? Because I cannot. There's so much shit going on. Not to mention the weird-ass movement of these guys. Like, why does Magneton stay still and Electros follow me? I just don't get it. Dodging half of their attacks was pretty much just determining how close I should stay into Magneton, because the further away I was, the further away both bosses would back off. It was really weird. I won't spoil any more of this boss fight because it's like actually a really cool boss fight, but this shit took me forever to beat, like hours to beat, and it's mainly because I just suck at Terraria. Like, I continuously get caught in the same attacks and I constantly make the same mistakes. It was just awful. After lots of trial and error, I finally managed to defeat the polarities on day 60. Let's go, let's go. Oh my god. The ending of that boss fight was nothing short of beauty. how the entire thing was amazing. This really helps me realize how closely these 1.3 mods rival the new 1.4 mods like Starlight River. The Polarities dropped a ranged weapon called the Arc Bolter that summons a ring of arrows around the cursor and electrifies and magnetizes wooden arrows. They also dropped a bunch of Souls of Smite and polarized bars that are used to make the final set of gear. Now visually, this new bow was a banger. It was an absolute banger, but it didn't even do more damage than the weapon I was using. The only thing that made it even slightly better was just that I didn't really have to aim at the boss anymore. I could just hover my cursor over it and everything would be fine. I spent days 61, 62, and 63 making and testing out every single endgame item, and I determined that the missile charger was the best because it was homing. But the coolest weapon was the magnetic streams. Like check this shit out. It works exactly the same way it does like how the Polarities use it. And that's it. Sorry for this video making it nowhere near 100 days, but there just wasn't that much content in between bosses, so I was kind of just defeating them left and right. This mod was super fun though, and the next 1.3 mod that I'm currently playing right now is even better than this one. So come back to see that. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you soon.